Welcome back to the Heart of Glass podcast. We finally made it to the premiere of season 2, and we're so glad that you're joining us today. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and follow on whatever platform that you're enjoying this today. Today's Glass City guest is a dynamic young creative director and musician. Jelani Maliik, known professionally as Knightheart, has been honing his craft for the past 8 years. He's launched multiple full-length projects and captivated audiences across the region with his live performances. In addition to his music career, Jelani founded his own company, showcasing his entrepreneurial spirit and his leadership skills. He is a true believer in the power of manifestation, and despite facing adversity, including periods of homelessness, Jelani has remained steadfast in his pursuit of success and has since become a driving force behind a citywide movement. Please join me in welcoming Jelani Maliik.
So Jelani, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited to have you be my first guest for this season. I'm excited for people that don't know who you are at all to get to know you. And I'm excited for people who know a little bit about you to get a much more well-rounded look at who you are. So I'm excited you're here, and I'm excited to promote you and your mission, and just so happy that you wanted to spend some time with me today and have a good conversation.
Oh, you're awesome.
Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely.
I was so deeply impressed when you shared your background info with me. You are one of those people who, even though you've been through so many different things, you could have let that destroy you, but instead you took that and you used it for good, and you used it to not only elevate yourself, but to elevate others and to elevate other people that have been in your same situation. So I'm excited for you to be able to impart what you've learned, what you've experienced to our people here in our town.
Absolutely, I'm grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. So your family became homeless when you were in your early teens due to a series of unfortunate circumstances. Can you tell me about your experience with homelessness and how it affected you?
Homelessness I'll kind of base it off I can tell you the story a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
So I became homeless in my early teens, and I started off early in school as an academic. I was an academic achiever. Some would say overachiever.
Yeah.
In elementary school, they double promoted me twice. So I was 2 grades ahead. And so the trajectory I was on was I was going to go to college, get my degree. I was going to be a scientist. I wanted to be an astrophysicist. I really wanted to study the stars and do... And that was a lot of schooling, but I was at a space where that's where my primary thought was. And that's when the unfortunate circumstances unraveled, and I dropped out of school. I wasn't able to maintain school. It's difficult to be in school when you don't really know where you're staying, what you're eating, where you're sleeping at the end of the day. And so my academic career took a spiral, and that's where I had projected a lot of my identity at the time. You know, I'm 12 years old, 13 years old. I'm an academic in school. I'm thinking, okay, this is my future. I'm researching high schools, and all of a sudden my life hits a turn. It shattered my self-perception, and I didn't know what that looked like because I'm a preteen. I don't even know what self-identity looks like for myself, but whatever inkling I had of it was gone at that point. And the classmates I was in, my friends, they didn't quite understand what was happening to me. They were young as well, and so I would tell them like, yo, I'm struggling, I'm going through things, and so they wouldn't quite understand. So I began to become outcasted, felt like, from the realm of schooling, my age group, the things I was beginning to be exposed to in homelessness through the shelters and through having to stay with people, dependencies. I was being exposed to very mature environments. And so things that I was perceiving at the time were things I couldn't communicate to my peers because they weren't relating on certain aspects. And so bouncing around from homeless shelters and traveling and having to essentially live out of a duffel bag from my early teens to my late teens, it shifted my perspective of a lot, and it forced me into a space where I had to find a way to express myself. I had no idea what was going on. I had no control over my situation. Mother's a great mother. She's a great mom, but unfortunately she could not maintain and sustain our situation at the time. So I was exposed to a lot. And so through the circumstances, I needed to find an outlet. And so poetry became that for me, and it just became writing and just trying to get my thoughts and all the things that I felt like I couldn't express to anyone around me into another space. And so poetry became that.
Sure. So I would imagine you were talking about, being the age that you were dealing with a lot of things that most people your age, I would imagine, that you went to school with, were not dealing with. So your concept of the world and how it works was very, very different. And your priorities, I would imagine, was very, very different.
Absolutely.
So how did you deal with everything that was going on, with the challenges that presented to you? How were you able to still move through life as a quote unquote regular kid and dealing with what you were dealing with?
Definitely had to find my form of normalcy. And so like for me, that looked like I had a very interesting outcast group of friends. I bounced around from high schools, but I couldn't stay in one space for too long because of my home situation. And dealing with the public school system. They tried to make certain structures to help me sustain even with my situation, but even with them trying to help, I wasn't getting a formal education. I wasn't getting a formal education. And so in that I had to figure out how to create my own world. And so that stemmed from when I started writing poetry, and then I kind of bounced around from high school, and the people that I met, my social group, they actually became fans of my art. They actually gravitated towards like what I was doing with my poetry and my writing. And so even then, initially with like me trying to find people who connected with me, the way they connected with me through my artistic expressions. And so that's how they connected with me and became my friends and decided that they would be with me in some capacity. So it was very difficult for me to navigate as a normal kid, but I had to find my form of normal in it. And it was this really interesting, eclectic way through the poetry and the music, and finding people through that connected and resonated with me. And some of them were not actually in my age range. I connected with a lot of older folk and older upperclassmen who understood more about me than even the ones who were in my age range.
Just what I've seen of you on social media, just so our listeners and viewers know, this is actually our first time meeting in person. So most of my experience of you is just seeing what you're putting out on social media. And I can tell just from watching those things that you have a very old soul, which is a good thing. And so I'm not surprised that you would have been able to connect with people who were definitely in a very different age group than you were. So how did you find poetry and writing as a form of self-expression at that time? Did you just suddenly have the idea, I want to write and I feel like maybe this will be helpful? Or was it not even that thought out? How did you discover that was something that you love to do and it helped you?
So a funny story. So like writing, I remember like writing songs and singing melodies at a very young age, like a very young age. I felt like it was always something like called to me as far as just like music and sound, but it was never anything serious, right? It was just something I liked doing. I would write a little ditto, I would sing it as a kid, but it was never something legitimate. My mom actually was an MC. She was an MC in Detroit in the 90s, and she was actually pregnant with me when she released her second album. And so
okay, so music very much runs in your family then.
It was an early influence, especially like hip hop specifically, because I grew up listening to her album. And so like I already had a precursor of like what self-expression would sound like. I just didn't have anything to say at the time because I'm a kid. I really don't have too much to really deep to say. I haven't lived a life yet. And so, at the time I did write, I would like write raps or whatever. It was never anything intentful or anything serious. It was just me just having fun with it. Growing up in like early elementary school, there would be like talent shows where they would do like well, I didn't write raps, but I would cover raps. Like I would rap an Eminem song, or I would rap a B.O.B. song, or certain artists, I would rap over their lyrics. I didn't write anything of my own, but the idea of performing and rapping and expressing myself was always like, the seeds were always there, but they had never connected. And so I was writing and in my early teens, and there was a point where my writings became something I would do like recreationally, and then something I was doing ritually. Like it was just something that I would do, I would express myself. But once again, it wasn't until the circumstances occurred and I was exposed to situations where I really had something to say. And so poetry and like rapping and self-expression, it was always floating in the air around me, but it wasn't until my circumstances that it rooted in me, and it was like, okay, this is something that you actually could really use right now. All this stuff that's been around since you were a kid that you've been kind of toying with is something that you need right now.
It very much sounds like the evolution from your writing being strictly poetry to then becoming songwriting. Seems like that was a very, very natural process.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
That process really stemmed from when people started listening. I love being a poet. I love performing poetry. In my experience, I noticed people listen more attentively when I sung or when I had a cadence, a certain kind of rhythm, and I was like, well, I could just put this under like an instrumental, and then it's kind of just a song. And so
initially were you kind of doing more spoken word?
Yeah, and I was literally putting my poetry over like instrumentation, and then my writing evolved just naturally from that.
What a beautiful natural evolution. I've heard you already speak very highly about your mom a couple times. What does that mean to you to have her influence on your art form?
So honestly, early on it was really intimidating.
Was it?
Like, I'm like, she's amazing, she's great, and then it's like I'm thinking about, I'm not looking at it from the idea of what it could, the reality of making music. I don't know what the reality is. All I'm seeing is this grand, like, oh wow, they made an album, they're making music, it's great. So it's like the standard for me subconsciously was so high. My thoughts early on was, if I don't write a verse that my mom can be like, yo, this is good, then it's not good. And so like I had to, that was a great motivation at one point, but then I had to break out of it and then find it for myself and be like, like I have to love my art for myself and my own journey. And I've been lucky to have a very supportive mom in my artistic journey. But early on, I will say it was really intimidating because the standard was like, yo, she's so good, you know. But and now we work together. I've had her on songs, we've collaborated. It's been a completely different journey as I've evolved as a musician, and her being able to perceive me go through the things that she was experiencing early on in her artistic journey decades ago, and just seeing her son evolve into a musician. I think it's an interesting dynamic for her.
That is very interesting, and I think it's incredible. I think so many artists would dream of literally being raised by the person that is ultimately a huge mentor in their life. Sure. So what a cool thing that not only was one of your biggest influences close to you, but it's your own mother. That's really awesome. So can you tell me more about your journey towards creating a successful music career, and then the challenges that you faced along the way? Because at one point you're writing poetry, you're songwriting, and then this starts becoming a realization that you figure out that you want to do this for a living. So what is your journey like from initially figuring out that you like to songwrite to wanting to make this a career?
So I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know it was gonna be a career for a long time. I was in a space where I was very lost. Honestly, I was very lost. The one compass I had was music kind of guiding me along, and I wasn't perceiving it at the space and time like it was gonna be a profitable career or anything. I was just thinking like, this is something to be doing right now. I'm in a homeless shelter. I'm barely in school right now. I'm barely keeping up with anyone. There became a point where booked my first show when I was either 14 or 15 years old. And when I first started booking shows, that was actually the main way that I was getting my classmates from high school to come see me. I would be out of high school, and I would go after school and sell them tickets to my shows, and they'd be like, dude, you weren't in class today. And I'm like, yeah, I'm dealing with all this, but come see me perform on Friday. I'm gonna be out the so-and-so. And so my life became centered as around music without it being a career-based thing. It was just like, okay, well, I wrote, well, I need to record now, and then where I'm gonna put it out now. Okay, well, I got a show book where I'm gonna perform, and my friends are gonna come see me. And then before I knew it, like, it became something that people were following. It became something that people were perceiving as like, oh, you're a musician. And I didn't realize it. I was just like, well, I'm just doing what I need to do, right? I don't know what else to do in my life right now, to be honest. I'm a 15-year-old kid. I've got a bunch of raps, and I've got opportunities to perform and record. I guess that's what I'm going to do. And then people started seeing it, and they're like, well, you're doing it, you know? And I'm like, wow, maybe I should take it seriously. Like, maybe it could be something. And then I started perceiving successful musicians and hip-hop artists and people in the field, and the reality that it's possible on an independent level to create a living off of it. And here I am, like, living for it, and I'm like, wow, I can make a living off of it. So, like, there was a point where my mentality clicked and changed, where it was like, okay, let's be honest, I'm broke, I'm homeless, I really don't have any real resources but my music. People like my music. I can sell a mixtape, I can sell a t-shirt, I can get people to buy my tickets and make money off of that. And so, like, before I knew it, it was like, okay, now I can monetize this. And it started off with little crumbs, like making $3 off each ticket. I sold 10 tickets, that's $30. And for a 15-year-old kid who's homeless,
that's some decent money.
I can eat, I can get me some food, I can buy me something fresh for my show. It's not a lot of money, but it was something I made myself in a situation where I didn't have anything. So it had to evolve from there.
Did that, being able to have a way to make some money at that time, did that help give you somewhat of a sense of control in what I would imagine for a variety of circumstances was probably a very chaotic situation?
Yeah, absolutely. There were times where I was changing in a Wendy's bathroom before my set, because the homeless shelter, the bathrooms there weren't optimal, and here I am. I have to walk across town or catch a bus to the venue, and I gotta freshen up, so I hit the Wendy's bathroom, and then the curfew at the shelter is 10 o'clock. I perform at 8, so how do I get from the venue back to the shelter before curfew? So it's like, yes, I was doing it, but the circumstances I was doing it under were very extreme, and having to constantly be like, yo, buddy, can you give me a ride? And even sometimes I had a couple partners in it early on, and we would carpool cars full of people, because we're teenagers, right? A lot of high school kids don't have cars yet, and their parents are wondering where they're at. So we're like, okay, we'll take them, we'll meet you. And I had to load up the car full of high school kids just to come see me perform. Like, the circumstances to make it possible were very extreme. And early on, I think that's where the grit really stemmed from, the kind of like get it by any means necessary kind of aspect come from, because I love doing it. I love doing it. And the circumstances have never been easy, but I love doing it. And so no matter what the resistance has been, it's just been like, well, we're gonna get it done.
That's incredible. You were saying earlier that you were noticing that people were kind of gravitating towards your music.
Yeah.
I think that speaks so much to your energy.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to your energy, absolutely. I think it speaks to your energy. I think it speaks to your skill level.
Yeah.
And then just listening to you talk about everything that you had to go through to even get to a show, your drive is incredible. Especially thinking about the fact that you're describing events that were happening when you're still in high school. To be able to accomplish those things as a 14, 15, 16-year-old young person, that's a lot of drive and a lot of passion. Did you realize that you had that fire inside of you to that extent, or were you just kind of having tunnel vision and just kind of hustling at the time?
It was absolute tunnel vision. It was actually multiple people outside who had to tap me on the shoulder and remind me, like, hey, like, you're really doing it, like, you're doing it. And that's when all the light bulbs started clicking off, because really, to me, it wasn't anything I was looking to make any looking to make money and survive. I'm not going to say that. But at the same time, music became a lifeline for me, right? It became something where I lived for and gave me purpose. Whereas some days, my depression was so bad, my self-esteem was so bad, like I had so many internal issues, and that music was just my beacon and my light beacon. So no matter what the circumstances were, it was like, it's either I'm gonna deal with all this extreme stuff anyway, or I'm gonna deal with it and then follow my light beacon at the end of the day, you know? And so that constant need to follow that beacon kind of put me in a position of like, I felt forced to do it. It was like, well, I don't really have any other choice here. It's either that or I'm gonna let this light die inside of me. And truthfully, with all the mental health issues I was battling, I knew I couldn't succumb to that. So having even 3-4 people from my class who, you know, might not have known I was going through what I was going through, see me perform and they'd be like, wow, like we didn't know like you had that in you. Like, wow. I've had people who had no idea until I performed and gave them that view into my internal, and then they were like, wow, like it's crazy. And that's where I couldn't be open in certain levels because it was difficult for me to tell people what I was going through. It was easier for me to just perform what I was going through. And so that's where I did find my following, my people, my tribe in a lot of sense through just expressing myself artistically.
So talk to me about the word manifest, what that means for you and why that word is so significant in your life.
So my understanding of manifestation is we all have the ability to manifest, and we manifest things all the time, right? The difference is intention, right? What we set our intentions to manifest into our life and having those specific ideas of what we really want for ourselves. And that can be very difficult because as people, we think we want that or we think we want that. You know, you say, you know, you think you want it till you get it, and you know, but it's about shedding all of that and then finding what you really want and focusing on that. Because when you bring that into your world and you manifest that, that's where a lot of the fullness and completion comes from. And so I try to tell people, just as a basic philosophy in life, to remind themselves about manifestation. Because manifestation is a daily practice, you know. I always use the example like, hey, I might say, yo, I want some McDonald's right now. And then I drive up to get some McDonald's. And then I look, and I got some McDonald's. You might not think that's manifestation, but I put energy, action, and received. That's manifestation. I thought something, I put energy into it, action, and then I received it. That's manifestation. Now that's a basic form of it. But if we're talking about whatever you want in life, you can manifest that. And that's my belief system and philosophy that I try to instill in people who are battling with feeling powerless or feeling like they're lacking control or that they can't, because you can manifest into your reality very positive things, negative things too, which is why it's a mindfulness thing. But you can manifest a lot of beneficial, positive things, but you have to have a thought, put that energy into action, and be ready to receive at the end of the day.
I feel like you just gave a great 101 crash course on manifestation and really mindfulness too. The ability to be in the moment. So thinking about how that is such a huge philosophy and part of who you are, how did you manage to create a citywide movement based off of that within the music and art scenes, respectfully?
So that's a crazy place to sit. And I'm really grateful that I've been in a space to influence people. That's really where a lot of my inspiration comes from, is knowing at the end of the day, someone's watching and being inspired by it. And so in this journey, my whole goal has been to connect with people and build them up. I think our community is so enriched with valuable people with so much insight, skill, life experience. And I think sometimes when you're isolated and you feel alone and you don't feel like that community empowerment at times, it can be really difficult to keep at something and just not having that support system. And so doing what I can as an artist, right? Because I need a support system, right? We all could use one. So why not support each other, right? And create that internal motion of, okay, well, you're a videographer. well, you're a musician, well, you're a comedian, well, you're an actor, and before you know it, you're a model. All these things intertwine and they create these subcategories. Everyone knows each other, has positive relationships, and now we're creating content together. Now we're collaborating. Now we're enriching the community, putting things out into the world and saying, this is us, this is Toledo, this is our community, this is what we have to offer. That's important, and all I've wanted to do is play a part in showing that it's not just me, right? I believe in myself, but it's not just me. There's so many amazing people here, and if I can help showcase any individual on any level that they're beautiful or that they're amazing, I try to do that through either showcasing a performance or collaborating them through my content and giving them a piece of my platform and exposure, whatever it is in the nature, or just connecting people, because I might not be the person who can help you, but I might know someone who can. And so just trying to play that bridge has created a wider spider web, and I'm just grateful that I've been able to help weave it a little bit, you know, be a part of it, and see so many creatives evolve past these couple years. I've evolved a lot, but what's inspired me has been evolving alongside so many other amazing people around here.
I'm so glad that you're the first guest of the season, because when you initially started talking about the citywide movement, I felt like you were describing this podcast, because when I started it, that was my whole goal, is exactly what you were saying. Our city is so full of incredible people, and I think sometimes people get this misconception that to make a big impact in other people's lives or in your community, that you have to be a high profile individual or have done something over the top to benefit your city. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is every single person has a story, and every single person contributes to the makeup and DNA of our city. And when I started this, I wanted to elevate people, because we have so many amazing people in our town. I'm so glad that you get that, and that you feel that, and that you want to do that. I can also tell that it makes you a little bit uncomfortable having that kind of influence.
A little bit.
Does it? Yeah, it certainly seemed like that. Can you elaborate for me why that? I could just see there was a little bit of discomfort there.
Well, you know, I'm grateful. There's been moments in the journey where sometimes it's shocking. I've had moments in the journey where I didn't really realize how widespread my influence was, and I was in moments where I was taken aback by maybe situations where I thought I wouldn't be recognized, and I was, or the kind of praise I was getting for things that, although like I said, I'm very grateful and appreciative of, you know, I think sometimes that idea of, well, I could be doing more, or, you know, maybe I'm not doing enough, or, you know, yes, I know I've made an influence and impact, but I'm thinking about a more macro scale, and it's like, well, I have so much more work to do to be able to say, to be able to feel like I sit with that. And so even though I'm very grateful that that's something that people feel and that people have been able to perceive in my journey, and when I sit back, I just think, well, I've got more game plans to run, you know, I've got more.
That's that drive though, right? To a certain extent, do you feel like even though you can appreciate your accomplishments, you're never quite fully satisfied with where you're at, and you want to keep pushing? Yeah,
that's one of those balancing acts that has to be constantly just fiddled with, you know.
Sure.
It's like you work hard, you do the research, you show up, you show out. I mean, you're executing, and then there's moments where it's still well, I could be doing more. And so you have to be very careful alongside that journey. I've had moments where I didn't realize how hard I was working, and then I burnt out, you know. And so it's having those moments where it's I'm working hard, also rest is an important part of working hard, right? Looking back and reflecting on what you're doing and strategizing the next step is also figuring out what's next. It's not always moving that makes motion. Sometimes it's also sitting still that makes motion as well.
I love that you said that. I think that's a really key thing that all of us miss at some point when we're striving towards something, is I think we often forget that rest and relaxation and rejuvenation is a key part of the process. Because if you're going 100 miles an hour 100% of the time, where is the time to reflect on what you're doing and then strategize, okay, where do I go from there? I think that's a really great thing to keep in mind, is we all need to rest, and it's not taking away from your productivity at all, or saying that you're not a motivated, driven person, but I feel like you can't continue to drive and continue to move to the next thing.
You gotta gas up and hit the pit stop sometimes.
Definitely.
You have to hit the pit. And that's often where the best inspiration lies, right? Like leaving space for more. Like I try to make sure I never try to fill my cup too full, because I feel like if you do that, you don't leave space for the fresh energy and fresh ideas. And rest allows you to kind of get rid of the stuff that isn't serving you, empty out some of the excess, keep the nutrients, keep what you need to carry, and then still leave space for whatever rain comes in and pours in, because that might be what you really need to inspire you to keep going. And there's been times where I wasn't inspired. I wasn't inspired to make anything, write anything, do anything, and I sat for a week, I sat for 2 weeks, I sat for 3 weeks, and then the idea came, and it was a great idea, and I loved it, and I didn't force it, I wasn't waiting for it, I was just being, and then it came, and so not having that almost like impatience for productivity either, because sometimes it's periods for things,
that's
and you
true.
have to have time to just, there's going to be times where you're on the run and you're on a race and you're on the hustle. That's beautiful. But other moments, you got to save space. You have to.
Absolutely. So with your music, overarching, are there particular themes or messages that you kind of have infused throughout all of your work that you want to convey to the people that are listening to your work?
Number one, all the OG Knightheart fans are gonna know this one. It's trust the process. Trust the process is like the real, like, I started preaching that at a very young age, because it was just like I didn't really know what was going on in my life. So my only philosophy was, well, I trust the process. And that became something that actually brought a lot of comfort to a lot of my following and a lot of my people. So I decided to kind of like fiber into a lot of the narratives of my songs, and throughout my history, like I'll kind of sprinkle it in there. And it actually all spawned from one song that's actually called Trust the Process. And I dropped that and very early in my career. It's probably only available on SoundCloud right now, but I referenced it so many times throughout my music that even if you didn't catch that OG like Trust the Process song, I try to sprinkle it out there. That, and just constantly the manifestation thing, constantly reminding people that they can manifest their dreams, and trying to tell my story. Like I like to have fun with my music and just give people an experience, but throughout it all, I want you to still leave with the knowing of like who Jelani is and who Knightheart is.
That's awesome. I can definitely tell that for you, everything that you do artistically, you want it to mean something. And I can tell that you very much, like, at the heart of everything is you want it to mean something for you, but it seems like even more so you want what you're putting out to be able to impact others for good.
That really came from seeing it though. Like originally I did make a lot of music just as a form for me. Okay. And then I saw people connect with it like emotionally and tell me their stories and open up. I'm like, wow, I'm opening up portals that from people that like weren't previously accessed, because I'm being honest with my feelings. Like this is crazy. I didn't really correlate it until I saw it, and then it's like, well, started performing and I started writing more music specifically gearing towards certain narratives or certain things I knew other people could connect with, and then I started seeing how me intentionally writing music to connect with people changed, because before it was just connecting with myself, and then it was like, well, I'm gonna connect with myself and then connect with other people through this, and then that intention, I saw people, people have told me things, my music has made an impact on them, and it always just like humbles me, shocks me, and it's just like, it's sometimes unbelievable that something I make could make that kind of an impact on someone, but the fact that I know it's possible is what drives me to constantly hit that top edge, because it's like, I might not always believe that because I'm me that I'm capable of making that impact, but the reality is if I'm putting something out into the world, it's going to make an impact on someone. So why not just try to make that best impact, that best impression that I can?
That speaks huge volumes. I feel like, you know, we were talking about connection before we even started the interview. We were talking about how important that is. I feel like what you just described is a perfect picture of why connection is so important, because sometimes we don't have the energy, we don't have this, we have moments where we don't have the self-esteem to believe in it ourselves. So when you have a community of people around you who can still believe in it for you, even when you can't, I feel like that right there is such a perfect picture of why connection is so important. Because when you can't lift yourself up, you need other people to lift you up.
Absolutely. And other people to understand you in that sense. You know, I think that that's super important, and creating safe spaces to have those honest conversations and those transparent dialogues. And as artists especially, like, we're vulnerable. We're exposing and exploiting our sensitivities. And across history, I found a lot of artists and a lot of creatives find their craft and find their art as a way to express things that they typically don't express. And since that's in true. Those senses, when you have an artist who's putting their self on display like that, it's very important to create communities and safe spaces that appreciate that value, appreciate that art. You know, it's very difficult to see an artist or a musician or any creative display their art and then have people present but not present with the art. You know, that's very difficult. I've been at shows and concerts, and I've performed countless shows where, you know, there was a crowd but they weren't present. And you know, it's different performing in front of a crowd who's with you, who's locked in, who's following you, and one who's waiting for the next performer to come on. And the kind of experience that can inflict as a creative, as an artist, especially, let's say I'm up there preaching my life story and the whole crowd's just looking at me blank. Well, that's kind of discouraging.
That's
like,
very discouraging.
I'm giving you my soul and you're just looking like, all right, it's mid. You know, it's tough.
I get that though, right? Because energy feeds energy.
Exactly.
So I feel like when you are putting out so much energy and you're giving the crowd, you're giving your audience all of yourself, having that reciprocation is incredibly helpful, and it feeds that energy inside you. So when you give that out and it's met with less than enthusiastic energy, no matter how confident of a person you are, I feel like it's almost impossible for that to not dampen that energy a little bit, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. It took me a long time to create like a different mental programming, a philosophy to allow myself to perform even despite those circumstances. Because I've done countless shows, and a lot of the shows early on, it was kind of an emotional dampener and a drain when I did all this and I expressed myself and I'm going hard, and to not reciprocate that energy at the end of the night, it did feel a lot more draining, and that post-show depression hit a lot harder. But I came up with this philosophy, and it's like this: it's my job to entertain you, it's not your job to entertain me. Right? I'm the life of the party, you're the crowd. If I can't get y'all engaged, if I can't get y'all having fun, that's on me. And at the end of the day, I'll move on with that, and I'll live with that, and I'll enjoy it, because at the end of the day, I have another show and another crowd to do. But at the end of the day, it's my job to entertain y'all, not y'all to entertain me. It would be beautiful for y'all to be up there hype, singing my lyrics, waving your arms. And yes, that would be a great energy feeder for me. But at the end of the day, y'all came here to see a performer. You guys are the audience. And so I'm doing that separation and reminding myself I'm doing my job regardless of their response. My job is to go hard regardless of their response, because this is my job. This isn't meant to be taken personally in that sense, to where it's like, oh, they don't like me. Well, that's okay. I've got the next 15 minutes up here, so I'm gonna have fun, enjoy myself, and most of the time, even with a dry audience, there'll be that one person, two people will pull you to the side. You did amazing up there. You did great. And it's like, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, so someone's always watching. Even if you're not getting the energy you think you're getting, they're all still observing, and you're still making an impression. Do you want them to leave and say, well, we didn't give them energy, and so he got pissed on stage and threw a hissy fit and yelled at? I've seen artists do that. I've seen, you guys better turn the fuck up or else blah, blah, blah. It's like, why are you insulting the crowd? Like, this is your audience and you're yelling at the screen. It's like, yo, it's not that serious. Like, your ego is getting out of line right now. It's like, just do what you're here to do, and the crowd will do what they're gonna do, you know? And it's a natural progression. But being upset about it, taking it personal, being emotional, all those things will burn you out quicker. You know, I've done shows in front of 5 people. I've done shows in front of close to 500. I've done really variations, and through it all, it's always, even if the crowd is different, I show up the same, you know?
I feel like that was such good advice for musicians, no matter what specific vein of music they're doing. Even thinking about, Toledo has a really great cover scene. Even thinking about transferring it into the cover scene, I don't think it matters what type of music you're playing. I think it's very easy for musicians to get discouraged. I feel like that's such good advice to remind everyone that even if the crowd overall doesn't appear to be locked into what you're doing, exactly what you said, it'll be that one person or two people and that you find out at the end were really impacted by it, and then that's the payoff, right?
Exactly. And the payoff looks different every time, you know, and it's about being able to recognize what those payoffs look like. I did one show in Indiana, and you know, the crowd, they weren't really rocking with me super heavy. You know, I did my thing up there, but there was this one lady in the crowd. She raised her hand, she put up this, and we locked horns, and she was like, "You rocked up there." And out of everything that happened, the hour drive, the time on stage, the late night standing on my feet, that was the payoff. And I was able to recognize after everything that was the payoff. And I still carry that with me because it inspires me. And so finding those payoffs in those situations is really key. Because of course, the performance often isn't the payoff. You know, being on stage and doing the music, it's cool, but that's not really where your payoff's going to be. It's going to be in the things you experience through it. And if you can pick those, you'll be able to keep doing it. You know, you'll keep doing it because it'll feel good. That person, that one person letting you know, that one person connecting with you, sometimes is all you need.
So you are clearly an incredibly inspirational person.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. And I know that you want to impact people positively and you want to be an inspiration. Who inspires you in our city?
Ooh, man, there's some amazing creatives. You are one of them that inspire me.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
the work
that.
that you're doing. I would say Abby Sarabia is an incredible creative.
Yes, I'm on the same page with you.
Absolutely. The work she's doing with Creators Club is spectacular. Will Lucas and the work he's doing with the Toll House and creating the community down there is really inspiring. And just seeing the broader community start to build and interconnect on so many levels, you know, the work at the Arts Commission and the things that they're doing, it's some beautiful things that are starting to brew and really manifest in this city outside of just what I'm doing. And it's so beautiful to just see it all almost like enveloped together to where it's not separate as it perceives to be. It's all actually really interconnected.
That's so true. That is so true. So when you look at your music career, what goals do you have for the future?
Long-term goals is just creating a footprint, a sonic footprint. On the musical scale, I would like to just create that imprint of who Knightheart is on music. Not just a specific genre, not a specific sound, but just an impression on the culture of music. And so just continuing to release bodies of work that push the envelope, being experimental, collaborating as much as I can, and just trying to create, as I climb and create more platforms and opportunities for myself, creating opening doors for also other artists who are upcoming and need a hand up in the journey. So continuing just to feed the cycle and step into other realms like film and video games, trying to get music into other content on multimedias and things of the such, just branching out the content and multi-dimensionalizing it, because music's beautiful and it's used in so many things and so many different kinds of content. And so trying to figure out how to weave my way into all those different kind of baths, because I love making music, but I would love to see my music in different spaces and lights, you know?
I could totally, I spent a long time the past couple weeks really listening to a lot of your material. Especially considering the heart that is infused into your music. I could totally see your music and hear your music being in a variety of different mediums. I could hear your music on a TV show or movie very easily and getting wider reach in that way. Absolutely. So thinking about up and coming artists, I love that you brought that up and that you care about the people that are up and coming. Is there a piece of advice that you could give and impart to anyone who's in the beginning stage of starting their music career?
So that's a really funny question, specifically because I often, when I network and link with larger artists with bigger platforms, I'm often the upcoming artist asking those questions of like, what advice could I use and all those things. And so even from my journey and then what I've gathered from other artists who I've spoken to along the journey, I think being yourself and finding yourself is ultimately the key, because the thing is, having an original idea, being original to yourself, being authentic to yourself at first feels weird because it doesn't look like anyone else. It doesn't look like anything else. If it looks like it's you, and you can be inspired, you can have influences, of course, but when you start to trim down, you start to realize I am unlike anyone else. And people look at that as an uncomfortable thing. That's a superpower. You sounding different, you looking different, you talking different. All these things are your superpowers that you utilize to push forward. And so for any upcoming artist who's listening, use everything you have, your story, your interests, your everything in your life to compartmentalize that identity through your art. That's really what you're looking for. That's how you're gonna attract the people who are gonna connect with your art on that deeper fundamental level. You want people, they say, your fan base and your demographic is often is much like you. They like the same stuff you like. They enjoy the same things you do. So if you show them that, you start to attract the people who will appreciate and value you. And so just don't be afraid to be yourself. If you like this, if you like that, show it. If this is your hobby, if this is what your family, showcase it. Be honest and be transparent, because that's what's going to connect and endear people to you. Your music, especially in the music field, your music is often going to be a byproduct of why people like you. People are going to like you for who you are. And then the music might be a thing where I actually really enjoy a song or two by this person, but I really enjoy them as a person, or I really like their philosophy, or I really like what they stand for. It's a numbers game. Not every song you listen to by me you're going to enjoy.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like, well, I know where he's coming from, right? I know where his spirit lies. So at the same time, I might not like this song, but I still love him as an artist. There's plenty of artists, I don't bump every song they have, but I'm still going to tune in. I'm still going to check it out. I'm still going to support them because I know what mission they're on. And no matter if they drop a song that I don't like, or they drop a content that it's not my cup of tea. It's somebody's. You know what I'm saying? I'm still going to support them along their journey. And so do you. That's the best advice I can give.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
So I feel like this is a really good way to go out on. Can you give us a sneak peek into what you're working on? What are you excited about that's coming up for you?
So I'm really excited because I've got some projects in the city, as far as showcases, shows, concerts, art events, really trying to put a physical space to connecting people and community. As a musician, I throw a lot of shows and I headline a lot of shows, but I've been throwing shows that I'm not performing on. I'm just getting musicians to fill the body up.
Okay.
So just promoting and putting artists on, and then I've got some plans later this year to try to put the cherry on top and do something really cool for the city. So hopefully just doing a bunch of community-based music, art outreach content.
Very cool. Well, Jelani, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
It was so good to talk to you. Your humility is impressive. I love the head that you have on your shoulders, and I can tell that you are motivated by just simply wanting to do good and put good out into the world. So I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to sit down with you and talk with you and pick your brain, and also give our listeners and our viewers a little bit more of a picture of who you are, or to get an initial introduction to you.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you would like to say before we close this?
I would like to say, love yourself unconditionally. Mind yourself that you're the GOAT. Look in the mirror and say, I'm beautiful, I'm amazing, I got this. And manifest your dreams. That's all I got.